we are going to talk about how you can maximize your conference room and get you started thinking about how you can use your conference room in a hybrid work environment, in this new kind of normal that we're in, getting used to having remote workers, people in the office, kind of making sure that everybody is connected and we're able to join conferences together, maybe in a conference room, or having people in a conference room and calling into our video conferencing tools, whichever ones you want to use, how we can just kind of get together again and start conferencing a little differently. So over 50% of employees want to go back to their office, to their work environments, just for socializing, impromptu meetings. How often do you find yourself wanting to just talk face-to-face with someone, talking over IM? And it would just be so much easier if you could pop your head in their office and say, hey, do you mind getting together in the conference room just to go over something? So you want to start asking yourself, what will our meeting spaces look like? How can we utilize this meeting space to actually meet face-to-face and get working to a new normal, not totally normal, but working in a new normal conference room environment. So of course, there are some things to consider in this new reality. The first thing that we have to consider is social distancing. How many times have we heard that over the past few months? 6 feet apart. You definitely want to give yourself that space in your conference room. And we do want to identify our needs, gaps, and challenges specific to our work environment. Maybe you want to start thinking about, we're having a hard time meeting to discuss certain agenda items, or whenever we try to log on, so-and-so is having a hard time. Maybe internet is an issue. We definitely want to figure out what the challenges are before we just go crazy, jazzing up our conference rooms. We really want to identify what will work best for our environment, right? Then we want to find the right conference tools, and we want to educate our staff on how to use those tools. You don't want to invest the money on tools that nobody knows how to use, so you definitely want to kind of check in with your team, see how they are, how they're working. Maybe they already discovered some tools that work for them, and you can kind of get everybody using those tools. So definitely making sure that everybody knows how to use the tools. We are, of course, already seeing the increase in remote conferencing, but we definitely want to also keeping our data secure as we are conferencing remotely, sharing handouts in meetings or sharing documents after meetings, or possibly in some video conferencing, posting tools and chats. They allow you to kind of exchange documents in there, and we definitely want to make sure that we are doing that safely. And last but not least, just the ongoing maintenance of having a kind of hybrid conference environment. So we definitely want to think about room booking tools or planning tools to get everybody on the same page when you do have meetings. We want to make sure that we are limiting the number of surfaces being touched in the room, in the conference room, and also being mindful of sanitizing and cleaning those spaces. So the less equipment that you have in the room, of course, the less cleaning that you have to do. Certain things you're not going to get around, like wiping down a surface, things like that. But you definitely want to keep in mind how much equipment you're bringing in, because those are all things that are going to have to get sterilized and cleaned. So that's just a starting point to get you thinking about how you can still go places without going anywhere. You can really let your boardrooms, your conference rooms replace travel. A lot of us are not traveling to our clients anymore. We're not either getting on planes, trains, or automobiles anywhere to meet with our partners, clients, vendors face-to-face anymore. So let those conference rooms and boardrooms replace the travel costs and expenses that you're thinking that you are incurring, so we can rethink our spaces here. So the first one that I want to go over is just using what you have. You don't have to go nuts getting all new equipment. A lot of rooms are already equipped with cameras and sound systems, so you may want to just rethink how you can use that space. But also, meeting with people in a conference room, it kind of replaces that human connection that's lost when you can't meet face-to-face. I know we all go into conference bridges, but just seeing the person on the other end definitely gives that personal touch to meetings. Also, you don't want to let your space go to waste. So a lot of spaces that we have, I know a few of our partners have either event spaces or larger conference rooms. So those big spaces are still large enough to hold, in some cases, multiple people while maintaining that social distance. So while you may have been packing, 10 people in a room, you can cut that in half, maybe even less, maybe even a quarter of that number. In this larger space, and you don't have to worry about social distancing if you do have that larger space. You're very fortunate to maybe repurpose that space. And lastly, you can give your spaces new meaning. So when we do decide to meet in a conference room, and maybe we don't have our clients or our partners, vendors come into that space, maybe we just keep it people to come in, it brings a level of importance to a meeting that you wouldn't get from just your office, having everybody call in from their home office, or your desk at your place of work. Just having everybody kind of together in one room and calling that partner, calling that client, lets people know that you're willing to kind of come together into a common space and give them a call. And it does give that feeling of being in the same room. So it just, ups that importance, gives the air of, thank you for taking the time to meet with us. So let's talk about perspective on conference room numbers and what conference room spaces are mostly used for. So first we'll go over the percentage of usage by meeting group size, and let's talk about what these numbers mean. So 36% of the time, you really only have one person in that conference room. How many times do you go in there and the people are just, you have that one person in there kind of taking over the space and using the equipment in there for whatever reason? A lot of the time, 36% of the time. 40% of the time, there's only 2 to 4 people in that conference room. 10% of the time, we have 5 to 6 people. Sorry about that. And then 8% of the time is 7 to 10 people. And only 6% of the time do you have more than 10 people in the conference room at once. So what do these numbers mean? What does this mean? It means that 86% of the time, meetings have less than 7 attendees anyway. So if you do have a larger space, this may not be a big problem for you. Those 2 to 4 person conference rooms are where you're going to run into a little bit of trouble. Those tinier spaces are twice as likely to be at over capacity as 5+ person rooms. So if you do have these smaller spaces, then you really want to keep those numbers low. And the simple solution to this is to let fewer people in, so there's more flexibility to maintain social distancing. Really keep those attendees, those people in-person attendees, to the main people. If you have a dedicated note taker in these meetings, maybe keep them remote. Maybe that's someone who kind of calls into the meeting and just takes notes remotely. If you could just keep it to the most senior staff, then that would definitely help you keep those numbers low, especially in those smaller conference rooms. So let's get started. Let's talk about basics for every hybrid meeting environment. And what does that mean? So we definitely want to make sure that you are up to speed, because accessing the tools really depends on how good your internet connection is. A lot of the issues that we run into are just because our internet needs a little reboot or troubleshoot. So with a hybrid environment, it's really imperative that everyone can connect, and that's in the office and remotely working from home. So in the office, you want to make sure that you have a WAP or a wireless access point installed inside of the conference room. And this is just kind of like an extender into the conference room to extend your internet to make sure that you do have a strong connection. Bonus points if you can get a hard connection in the conference room. And you definitely want to have a plan if there is an outage, like backup internet. Maybe someone has a hotspot on their phone that will automatically connect if the internet does go down. And then in your remote work environment, for those people who are calling in from home, you want to make sure that they have sufficient equipment to work remotely. You want to just double check and make sure that their routers are up to date, and that's something that they would have to speak with their internet service provider if they need updated equipment. You definitely want to give it a little trial run to make sure that everybody does have the sufficient equipment. You want to make sure also that people have webcams, microphones, anything that they may need for video conferencing. You want to make sure that they have that equipment with them, especially if you have people using their own devices, you want to make sure that those devices are equipped to handle video conferencing throughout the day. And of course, the minimum internet speed would be 25 over 25 megabits per second. So those are the basics, those are the essentials. Your internet, super, super important for your hybrid environment. And what does this new hybrid environment look like in the office? So if you have a 4x6 table, it may look a little bit like this. You may want to push the table up against the wall, the end of one table, which would cut out a person in the room. But if you're looking to downsize, then that shouldn't be a problem. But you do want to make sure that there is 6 feet of space between everybody at that table. So this is just a rough kind of diagram of what a COVID-friendly hybrid environment may look like. You definitely want to have that big screen in the room to make sure that everybody can fit in the frame. Everybody can see what's going on with people who are calling in. So this is just a suggestion of what your conference room may look like. You also may want to implement some teleconference practices just to keep everybody on the same page and let everybody know how to best be heard while in the conference room. You want to keep ambient noise low. You want to make sure that your windows are closed. You want to avoid rooms with HVAC systems or forced hot air, conditioning going, lots of windows that may have the street or city noise coming in. You definitely want to close your windows, especially this time of year. And you want to mute your cell phones and keep them off your desk or conference table so they don't vibrate and everybody can hear kind of a buzzing as your phone is going off. And then also you want to be heard. You want to make sure you have microphones, either one centrally located in the conference room on the conference table, or you want to make sure that they are above everybody, which is really nice because then you don't have to worry about touching them. And you also may want to consider an echo canceling mixer for noisy rooms if you have a very echoey or windowy room, or a soundproofing material. And this just looks like a piece of fabric that kind of goes over the window and kind of cuts out that echoing or reverberation of noise going on in the room. Definitely cuts out the outdoor noises that we know and love in the city, of course. And last but not least, you want to make sure that everybody can connect. So you want to consider solutions that can automatically connect to meetings from personal devices. If you do decide to have everybody bringing in their device, you want to make sure that they're connecting to the internet automatically, that they don't always have to be putting in a password, maybe Bluetooth devices. And this definitely will help keep the number of services users touched to a minimum, and it also maximizes your meeting time. You definitely want to make the most of that meeting time. You don't want to be in that room any longer than you have to be, especially the more people that you have in the room. You definitely want to make sure that you are kind of in and out, have your agenda ready, and everybody connected to kind of keep that meeting time to a minimum. Just to make sure that everybody is staying safe. And also maybe you want to implement some room booking etiquette and just good behavior and good practices while you are teleconferencing, excuse me. So what does that mean? You want to arrive early and you want to test your connection. You want to make sure that you are on time to your meeting and making sure that everything is working properly. You don't want to ghost your meetings. It's easier to ghost the meeting when you don't have to go to a meeting room. If you are someone who's going to be calling into the meetings, you aren't going to be physically in that conference room, you want to make sure that you set a reminder on your phone. You don't want to just not show up because it's easy as just clicking into a room. You definitely want to make sure that you show up. Again, you want to keep meetings brief. You don't want everybody in that room for any longer than they have to be together. Of course, if you are calling from all remotely, then you can go a little longer, but it's easy to get sidetracked when you're at home. I know I do sometimes. Everybody's guilty of it. You don't want to monopolize the meeting spaces, and this goes with keeping the meetings brief. You definitely want to have an agenda, get in and out of that room. You don't want to be that one person who's in there 36% of the time. You definitely want to use that space for what its purpose is, and definitely make sure that you are wiping down those surfaces when you are done. You also want to use a room booking tool for easy scheduling. So this could be something like an ongoing document in a shared drive, or like a whiteboard outside or of the conference room, or a tablet or something like that, Microsoft Exchange, Microsoft Planner, anything like that, that lets people know when the room is going to be in use and how long that room will be in use for, to kind of plan out everybody's day. And lastly, but certainly not least, you want to book this space for essential attendees only and have everybody else call in remotely. So you definitely want to keep those numbers low, have only the essential employees in that room, note takers, and just kind of eavesdroppers, people who just want to be kept in the loop. You want to have those people call in remotely. But also keep in mind, the more people joining the room, sometimes connections can get a little wonky, so you definitely want to keep the number of people speaking and the number of people attending to a minimum. So let's talk now a little bit about creating your hybrid environment, and this is planning what would work best for your staff and your space. So you definitely, you can probably go real big with your conference room upgrades, or you can just do what's essential for your organization. You definitely don't want to go too crazy and then have extra equipment or tools that you're not going to use. You definitely want to keep it to what you guys will make the most of. So the first thing that we're going to go over is AV control systems, and these would be things to manage TV screens, the audio, lights in the room, or any other devices that can be controlled automatically or even through Bluetooth. So what can you control with these kinds of systems? You can have the ability to turn on or off the TV, things like volume control, having the projector come down or closing it up, powering on or off the projector and kind of hooking up when that projector goes on, having the screen come down so there's less steps, turning on a webcam or a microphone on and off, or having the projector or TV or whatever screen you have in that room turn on automatically when it's hooked up to a laptop. So those are some things that you can do to minimize the surfaces being touched, and also, of course, maximize your meeting time, which is, of course, what we're looking for, making things super simple for you guys. And what are some advantages? So some advantages of having this kind of control, of course, is reducing the number of people that have to touch the equipment and the number of times that people have to touch the equipment. With all the sanitizing and kind of decontaminating your surfaces, you definitely want to keep your work easier, definitely working smarter with limiting the number of things that you have to clean. And it's also great because several laptops can be connected at once with a lot of these control systems, and that would just switch around with just the touch of a button. So if you're all hooked up, you can kind of control whose screen is sharing at what time. And that's great for when you have everybody kind of in the room together having their own laptop. It kind of limits having to pass around a laptop. Having everybody touching the same equipment, definitely a no-no in the times of COVID. So if you are going to have people bringing in their own equipment, you definitely want to make sure that you have enough outlets, maybe power strips or USB ports to have everybody being able to hook up their equipment and share their screens. So let's get visual. Let's talk about why it's important to be able to see, because visual cues during these meetings are really essential for building those strong professional bonds. It's nothing, there's nothing compared to being face-to-face with a client or a partner. It really is nice to put a face to a name and really get to know who you're speaking with on the other end. And a strong internet connection is really essential to being able to see someone. Even a pixelated video you can endure. It's nice to just know someone is on the other end and paying attention. That's always nice. So to get visual, you can consider upgrading your viewing. And it doesn't have to be anything crazy. For a small room, maybe you have an extra TV laying around. It's the end of the year. I know there's a lot of sales around this time of year for a smaller screen. For a small room, you want to think maybe 42 to 50 inch screen. And then for a larger room, a little bit of a larger screen, a 60 to 90 inch screen, or possibly even 2 screens, which is really nice. And you can have multiple people calling in. You can kind of give them their own screen, which is really, really nice. But to ensure social distancing in very large spaces, you want to consider maybe a video wall or a projector. So that's an investment that you want to really think about. Hopefully we won't have these kind of limitations when it comes to our conferencing rooms and our spaces for forever, but you definitely want to kind of think about if you can use these upgrades in the future, if they are going to be something helpful to you forever, or if it's just something that's going to be helpful to you in the short term while we do have to maintain social distancing and these other guidelines. So that's something else that you definitely want to think about, not kind of over upgrading and just keeping it to what's essential for your spaces. And a little pro tip for when you are hanging your TV or mounting your TVs or screens, whatever you are thinking about putting up, when you are setting up the room, you'll want the screen mounted at or around eye level when you are standing up. And this is because a lot of the time on those screens, the camera's actually at the bottom of the screen, so you want them looking more here and not, down on you. So that's a little tip when you are mounting the screen, looking up at the screen and they are looking at you, at your faces. Can you hear me now? So while being able to see who you are speaking with is nice, if you can't hear the other person on the end, it's absolutely impossible to conduct a meeting. It's absolutely essentially that they at least hear you. You can endure a pixelated video for 30 minutes, but if you absolutely cannot hear, then you can't have a meeting. So some tools to consider to make sure that everybody is able to hear is first a conference room phone. And this is great for having a conference bridge that people can call directly into. They don't have to be rerouted. It's a direct number to the conference bridge, which is really, really nice to give out. You don't have to be routed through a receptionist or anything like that. Just calling into the conference room phone is a dedicated line just for that. Microphones, which we went over before, either a kind of one microphone to pick everybody up, or microphones in the ceilings, which is really nice, and speakers, of course. Important as it is to be heard, you definitely want to hear who is on the other end, so maybe amplifying that sound is something that you may want to consider for your space. So these microphones and speakers kind of go hand in hand, definitely amplifying your voice and the voices who you are trying to hear. But some things to consider when you are buying a microphone is what would work best for you. Is it worth shelling out the money to have embedded mics in your ceiling if you have a smaller room? Not necessarily. You can just have a single omnidirectional microphone, just kind of in the middle of the table to pick up everybody's voices around the table, especially in these larger rooms. You definitely want to consider noise canceling technology because attendees may be sitting further apart in the room. So you definitely want to make sure that everybody's voices are being picked up in the room. So just something to think about as far as what would work best for your spaces. And this could be a little trial and error as well. And of course, we wouldn't leave you without any suggestions for cool new tools. The big one that we're seeing is interactive smartboards, which is really, really great. It's an easy way to transition from remote work into the office. If you are working at home on your device and then hook it up to the smartboard, you can kind of show everybody what's going on your screen in real time. And of course, these smartboards are great for brainstorming, creating workflows, and for visual aids. I know I'm a visual learner. I love to see what people are talking about when they're talking about it with me. So if I can see their screen or see what they're talking about, that's always very, very helpful to me. And two smartboards that we will talk about is first the Microsoft Surface Hub, which is really great for our Microsoft 365 users with a wireless connection with Windows 8 or 10 devices in person and remotely. So with the screen, you'll have people in the conference room who are able to connect And also people who are remote can also share this screen with those of us who are not in the office, which is really nice, and it fully integrates with Microsoft 365, which allows for that kind of real-time collaboration with people in office and remotely, which is really, really nice. And of course, we have the Google version, which is the Jamboard, and it does essentially the same thing. It provides that wireless connection and ability to join remotely, and it fully integrates with the G Suite apps. These are some pricier options. Not everybody can afford a brand new Circuit Hub or Jamboard, so of course we can always upcycle our equipment. See what we have laying around and repurposing that equipment. If we are repurposing our conference rooms, we can definitely do the same with our equipment. And so upgrading our spaces can be as easy as using our unused equipment or giving your existing equipment a new purpose. So how many of us have extra tablets laying around? We can repurpose those. We can make them conference room devices. Bonus points because they are super, super clean to wipe, super easy to wipe clean, just wipe down. We can preload these tablets with applications needed for conferencing, which is nice. Or you can use them for devices as devices for note-taking. Also, to put outside a conference room, just to let everybody know when the conference room is going to be used, to kind of sign in and sign out. Great devices for that tablet. Another one is TVs. If smart boards are over budget, you can invest in a smart TV to use in your conference rooms. Or if you already have a TV, kind of a spare TV or a TV in one conference room, you can bring it into another conference room and have two TVs in one room to allow multiple boardrooms to call in. It kind of gives everybody their own space. You can have one for internal and one for external people who are calling in. Just a nice way to kind of get everybody a little FaceTime in the conference room. And lastly is allowing people to bring their own devices. Letting staff bring in their own devices is a great way to make sure that people aren't touching each other's equipment, keeping the surfaces that people are touching to a minimum. And you should also consider configuring their devices to the work network, the in-office network. But you may want to consider also having like one master device in the room, making sure that maybe the head of the department or someone who's on a senior staff have a master device so that you guys aren't fighting for who is going to connect. You can have one person kind of controlling or one device in the room controlling who is connecting, allowing people to connect or share their screens on the smartboard or TV, smart TV. So it's definitely good to have one master device in the room at all times. And definitely, again, consider adding more outlets or power strips to allow people to have their device charged while in the room. The last thing you want is a dead device while people are trying to connect or share their work in the room. On top of what we went over today, so conference rooms equal effective conferencing. So again, you definitely want to identify your company's needs, challenges, and gaps. You don't want to go crazy buying all new equipment and find that you don't need it. Time is essential for you and your environment. Find some pain points that your employees are having or your staff are having connecting or getting started conferencing. Maybe communication isn't so great. Definitely reach out to them and see what could be improved. You definitely want to think about your hybrid staff, how you can better support them and also keep your data secure. Of course, we want to highlight the importance of keeping your data secure. We want to make sure that you have the right collaboration and video conferencing tools. A lot of us by now probably are settled in with a tool that we're comfortable using, and that's great. You may want to just check in and make sure that everybody is using that tool, especially if you've invested in a new tool. If everybody is using that tool to its maximum capabilities and everybody has an easy time using that tool, just give it a little check-in and to make sure that your team knows how to use your video conferencing tools, but also the tools that you are incorporating in your conference room. So making sure that everybody knows how to automatically connect. Use Bluetooth devices if you decide to use Bluetooth devices in your room, just making sure that everybody's familiar with the tool. And of course, you can always ask us for help if you need to think it out, if you have a wish list, if you maybe just list the pain points. Maybe you don't know how to solve the problems. Maybe you just see a common problem that everybody's having and you're not sure how to solve it. Definitely reach out to us. We can kind of think through it together and see what would work best for you. That's why we're here. We are your partner. So maybe your meetings are looking like this, just a little relief at seeing some human beings on the other end, yelling you're on mute, fixing your camera, and really only 2% of the time you're having meeting content at all, but you can make it better. We can make this better for you. We can definitely help you out. We want to set up your company for success, and you want to set up your conference room. So of course, as always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, contact us at webinar@f8consulting.com. I will take a second to see if anybody writes in any questions that they may have. Again, this is just to get you thinking about what you may want for your spaces, to kind of think about the new year, how you may want to incorporate new tools, or getting everybody back in the office just for conferencing. But that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. I'm really glad that you gave us a second chance here to give this presentation to you. So thank you again for your patience while we worked out those bugs. And of course, if you have any questions, please feel free to email us. It was great speaking with you today, as always. And I hope you have a lovely, wonderful day. Stay warm and stay safe, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.